lot of limitations, a lot of issues. But I'm more so curious about how far these Sixers can go
Yes,
because
as am I.
they're playing really well right now. And granted, they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat, but I'm curious to hear what Keith has to say about these Philadelphia 76ers right now.
Yeah, and they won 129, 111, and honestly, it really didn't even feel like it was that close last night. And we are joined by the Sixers beat writer from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and you could follow Keith on X/Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days, at Pompey on Sixers, at Pompey on Sixers. Keith, what's up, man? How are you?
What's good, fellas? How y'all doing?
Great, man. Well, good to see you. It's been a minute. So let's hit it, Keith. I got to tell you, I know the Pistons are bad. I historically bad, maybe. But this team has been flat out fun to watch. And I know cynics are going to clap back and say, call me in the second round or whatever. And that's the way you want to go about it. Go right ahead. But does it feel different? Does it feel like when you talk to the players, you're around it every day, man? It just feels like there's been a weight lifted off of them, whether it was Doc, whether it was Harden, whatever. It just it feels like a vastly different team than what they had last year.
Yeah, and you know what? It is a vastly different team when you take the core away. You have, of course, you have Tobias, you have Maxey, you have Joel, but then you look at it outside, and you have DeAnthony Melton. But outside of that, the other guys who came back really don't play a lot. So when you look at their bench and you look at these other guys, these are all veteran dudes who came in, who've been on teams that went deep in the playoffs. And it is a completely different vibe. Like you said, different coach, but you have the core, but now you have a different set of role players. So yeah, it is a completely different vibe with this team.
Yeah, Keith. Thanks again for coming on to the show, man. Love what you do. Locked on Sixers with you and John Mitchell. I'm curious. We speak about the role players, right? And it seems like they're starting to come into form. They're starting to come into shape. They're starting to produce a little bit more consistently, coming off that bench. What's been your overall evaluation of the role players? Guys like Batum, Kelly Oubre. They had Morris back there, Rocco. Just what's been your overall evaluation of the ceiling of these role players?
Yeah, it's one of those things. That's a great question because you think about it a lot. Like the thing is, I think individually you look at them all and you say to yourself, like, is this the best guy? No, is this the best guy? But when you look at them playing in the system and you look at some of the different things that they do, I think the ceiling can be high because they all contribute and they all help out in different ways. Like you look at Batum. Batum is kind of like a PJ Tucker type of guy, but who's more productive, if that makes sense. Like meaning he's a guy that you get that you don't have to give the ball to, but when he gets that open shot, he's going to stick a three. You know that he's going to get his hands on the ball and he's going to get a steal and he's going to get a nice outlet pass to somebody, right? But at the end of the day, you look at it and you say, man, he only had 5 points today, but he impacted the game. And then, so you look at Robert Covington, he's the dude that will come in, he's a little streaky as a shooter, but at the same time, he collects a lot of steals. He gets a lot of steals, gets his hands on balls, with the length. And then, Marcus Morris is a guy, in my opinion, who I felt like was struggling a little bit. And he kind of reminded me, he's like, look, Keith, what can I do in 2 minutes? What can I do in 2 minutes, right? And then all of a sudden, it just seems like, he's been averaging, 17.2 minutes over the last 9 games. And this game has taken off. He's shooting 56% from three. He's kind of like a leader on the field, on the court, right? So when you look at it, all 3 of those guys, when you say individually, they're not like the sexy pick. But when you add them to the mix of all the other guys you have, there's 3 solid guys who can come off the bench and help you out. And if need be, they're all capable of starting.
I want to go back to Batum, Keith. I love the guy's game, man. I just think if you watch him, he does so many smart things on the court. He always makes the right pass. He knows when to screen off. He's got a quick release. He's a great complementary piece to Maxey and Embiid. He's a very underrated piece of the success that they're having so far, in my estimation. I think he's been awesome for them.
Exactly. And you know what? I'm glad you said that. Very underrated. Because, see, a lot of people we all talk about Kelly Oubre's record with the Sixers, right? So I believe Kelly Oubre right about now might be, what, 12-1, 11-1 with that. But the thing that people forget is, okay, now they beat Indiana without Kelly,
Mm.
right? But then the next time they played Indiana, they had no Kelly and they had no Nicholas Batum, right? And then they played Boston without Batum. So he can do a lot of different things. But the thing is, when he's not there, they miss him. Because even down to like Covington, you get like different guys have to play different roles. But the thing is, the one thing that I like the most about him is his selflessness. Like there was a time when he first came here, he said to me, he says, "Yeah, man, I got to get used to being involved." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, when I was in the Clippers, it was fine. My role was to just be, a role player, like do little things. And now they want me to score a little more." And I was like, but he wasn't complaining about the Clippers. He's just such a team player. Like other guys say it and you don't believe it because they just say it to say it. But he's a legitimate team player, a team first guy.
It's funny. Like Batum's been in the league for a long time, and you said something interesting. In the previous question, right? The fact that guys, even if they're not producing on the scoreboard, they are impacting the game. Do you think that's the main difference between this group of role players versus the ones the Sixers have had in the past? The fact that they have guys who, okay, maybe if they're not scoring, they still find ways to impact the game in ways that help you win.
I do. I also think less is more too. You know what I mean? I talked to you guys about this before. I think that this team right now, they know, like these guys been around for a while. I mean, you look at Marcus Morris and from Philly, I love him, from North Philly, the whole nine. But wasn't a McDonald's All-American. He was a guy who had to, keep trying to show people that he could play on that level. Patrick Beverly wasn't drafted, all these other guys. So when you look at these dudes, they're all like quintessential role players. And this is the reason why they're all in the league right now. I feel like in the past, you had a couple guys who they were unhappy with their role. Like if you were a bench guy, you wanted to come in, you wanted to jack up threes. If you were a star, you wanted to go out there and you wanted to be the man. Right now, these guys, they all know that Joel's the man, and they just want to do whatever it is to help the team win.
And Keith, I drew the comp, and it's not an exact comp, but it reminds me of the 01 Sixers a little bit in that you had a bunch of lunch pail dudes surrounding Iverson. I know Maxey's a piece of it too, so it's a little bit different, but you have a lot of good complementary piece. I think you also got tougher. You talk about Beverly, you talk about Morris. These dudes, the Sixers were missing an edge. And I think it's one of the reasons why they would go off the rails in big spots, that you didn't have those dudes. And I think that's going to help them later on in the season as well.
Oh, no question. And a prime example was last night's game. So Isaiah Stewart gets kicked out of the game, but basically he was reacting to Beverly, kept baiting him, kept baiting him, kept baiting him, kept baiting him. And then, you look over and the other new guys are all like, "You okay, Pat?" Like, they didn't go over there to cause the scene. Now, they did have to be separated at one point, but it was one of those things where they were like chuckling, laughing, like, ain't nothing happening tonight, partner. What I mean? And you look at it like, Marcus Morris, he's known for being a tough guy. Pat Bev, he's known for being a tough guy that gets under your skin. And then, you look at Nico, nobody messes with him. They respect him. So, yeah, you are absolutely right. They brought in a bunch of tough-minded guys. And here's the thing. This is the biggest thing that from Nico Batum's, I want to say it was his first or second game, right? Y'all remember when in the second quarter, right before the halftime, he ran in the locker room because he messed his hand up?
Yeah.
Right? Messed his finger up. Back in the day, that person would have been out for 3 days. This dude started the third quarter.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's the type of toughness we're talking about with these guys. Patrick Beverly's playing with a bad neck. How we found out it was a bad neck was because he had a spasm and he couldn't play the second half of a game and he was upset. But the next game he was out there. So it's a different type of mentality, and I think it trickles down to the team, to their teammates.
Yeah, I think what it is I think the difference is there's an authenticity to it, right? There's not guys trying to be fake tough or trying to, they're seeking out conflict, but it's guys that are just they are who they are, they know who they are, and they just fit into what the Philadelphia 76ers are trying to accomplish. I want to transition to Tyrese Maxey, right? Tyrese Maxey,
Mhm.
man, having a career year, let's just call it what it is, 26 points per game, averaging almost 7 assists, averaging less than 2 turnovers. The dude is efficient, he's effective, and he's electric, man. The triple E, man. And what's been your take on him as of late, man? Like, what's his ceiling right now? Is he so far, in your opinion, positioning himself to be an all-star this year? Because they're going back to the traditional Eastern Western format, which gives him a better chance of making it. So, again, just give me your raw thoughts on Tyrese Maxey right now.
I think he can become an all-star. Now, the thing about the all-star game, you got to understand, is it becomes a popularity contest, right? A little bit. Like, you have the voting, and then you have other people who are, like, oh, well, I like him, or he was grandfathered in. But when you look at it, you know, I know there are some people saying Tyrese Maxey is going to be a star this year. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, because you do have a guy like Dame Lillard, you do have Tyrese Halliburton who are playing well, right? But as far as him making that team, I can see it happening because a lot of the guys who we felt like were supposed to be the guy this year, for whatever reason, they're not having a good season, right? Either whether it's injury or it's other things, they're really not having a good season. So I think that he could make it. The one thing is we got to understand now when we look at the seeds, right? The seedings, you see where the Sixers are what in fourth place right now.
Yep.
So that could hurt him because
Mm,
typically, if they were in first place, then I would say, okay, he would make it. But typically, when you have a team in first, you're going to look at it like, okay, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. All right, well, the Milwaukee Bucks are in second. So it's going to be Giannis and Dame Lillard. And these two guys on each team's already all-stars. So it's easy to make that pick. The fact that they're in fourth, it might hurt him, but I do believe that he's playing at an all-star level and he deserves a lot of consideration to make that. I do.
All right. I think what we have done here is considered burying the lead, Keith. Let's
Mhm.
talk about Joel Embiid and what this has been so far for him. And 41 and 11 last night, 5 assists, 2 steals, does it in 31 minutes. The beauty of playing these cupcakes is he doesn't have to play the fourth quarter, and they'll get the Pistons again on Friday. But 33.8 for the season, 11 and a half boards, 6.4 assists. Efficiency wise, Keith, he's up in almost every single category here. Is this just the evolution of Joel Embiid? Is this Nick Nurse getting more out of him? Does he just feel good with this group? What is the reason not that he wasn't great last year, he was the MVP, but that you're getting even a better version of Joel Embiid this year?
You know what I think I think it's all three, to be honest with you. I do think that he's evolved as a player, right? I do think that Nick Nurse, from what I hear, is their conversation is an open. He says, "Hey, coach, I really like doing this. I like this certain play. I like the guy to come here." Nick's like, "Okay, let's try it out." And
Mhm.
Joel's like, "Oh, really?" Like,
Mhm.
so you know what I mean? So I feel like you get that freedom. But I think the one thing is, and this is the one thing that a lot of us aren't touching on. Last year, Joel Embiid got MVP, right? Everybody praised him. The playoff came, and then we saw how not Giannis, Joker was like getting assists, getting everybody else involved, this and that. And people looked at Joel and said, "Yep, he's the MVP, but he's a one-dimensional player.
mm,
Yes, he can block shots when he wants to, but does he really want to do that? Yep, he can score. He doesn't. He turns the ball over and he doesn't pass to teammates. Well, you look at Joel right now. And if you haven't noticed that his all around game, and you said the stats, if you haven't noticed that his all around game is like the best in the league, then you're not paying attention. And I feel like that Joel won't come out and say this publicly, but he's basically proving people like, look, y'all had it wrong. I am a complete player and I am doing certain things. So that's what I think. I think, like you said, everything you said, I think is all of the above. but I also believe that that was motivation for Joel in the offseason. Because y'all know it, there was memes going out that Joel was racing for the MVP while Joker was racing for a championship. So I think that Joel is out to prove people wrong.
You bring up a good point about his all-around game, and yeah, I mean, I don't get too mad about the turnovers, but a guy who handles the ball as much as Joel Embiid, he's pretty on par for his career average. But as far as the assists go, he's averaging just over 6 assists a game. That's two more. That's two more than he had last year, right? He's making it a point to not only get guys involved, but just show that he's capable of playing winning basketball when he's not putting the ball in the cup. Like you said, that speaks to his development. That speaks to his commitment to winning. And I think it also speaks to his maturity. And I also think he's just having more fun playing basketball this go around. Can you speak to that, and also just speak to, I guess, the timeline the Philadelphia Sixers had with Joel Embiid at this point, because Tyrese Maxey is playing well. They are, in the mix in the conference for sure, but you can't help but feel like, how long will his patience remain in the city of Philadelphia, despite all these strides he's making with his connectivity with the team, the new head coach Maxey, so on and so forth.
Yeah, first thing I want to talk about too. I mean, I'll talk about what you asked first, as
Right.
far as it looks like he's having more fun, which is true. But you know what? The lack of turnovers and stuff like that, or the cutting down on the turnovers, I'm gonna give that to Nick Nurse, because if you look at it, let's go back to when Joel played with JJ Redick, right? What was their go-to play? It was the dribble handoff, right? So what happens is, if you look at it, Nick Nurse has Maxey. He has other guys, wings coming over, like Melton at times. They come over and they get it and they go up and shoot. Bang, bucket when they're hot, right? And it seems like that's Maxey's most productive play. Like a lot of times, when you look at it. Another thing is, with the turnovers, what used to happen with Joel? Joel would get the ball. Other teams would bait him. Then they would double him. Well, now what the coaches is doing, he always has someone cutting to the basket. So it's kind of like, as soon as they come, someone's cutting to the basket. Joel's giving them the ball. They go up. That's an assist. Now, when we talk about the timeline, that's a tricky question, because, I mean, you look at it, right? You say Joel's 31 years old. Joel's has an injury history. So it's going to be one of those things where, I don't know if Joel's going to be like LeBron, being 38 years old and still being the best player on the team. But I think, like, when we look at Joel, it's going to be one of those things where he may pass the baton to Maxey in a couple seasons if he's still playing here. And the thing about the timeline is, like, you look at it, they have a lot of guys in their 30s and on expiring contracts, right? And the reason why I say that's a great question, but a tricky one, is because it's also going to be predicated on what the Sixers are able to do in the offseason. Like, if you know what I mean? Like I feel like with this team right now, the time is now, just because guys are older, right? But if they go out there and they can get some more young players, then it may be able to give them a couple more years. But I love Joel. He's arguably the best player in the league right now. I mean, and that's a big argument. I mean, you can make that case. But I feel like in a couple seasons that the torch is going to be passed on to Maxey, just because of Father Time is, unless you're undefeated. I mean, unless you're LeBron James is undefeated.
Right.
You got that right. I wanted to hit you with just off the Sixers for a second, Keith. What were your thoughts on the in-season tournament? Were you a fan of it? Did you like it just generally? I know the Sixers didn't do particularly well on it, but did you like it?
You know what? At first I was like, look, all right, if they want to send me to Vegas, I'll go to Vegas if they go, right? So that was the only thing that I was looking forward to, right? Going to Vegas and when it's cool. But no, I was a fan. At first I didn't think I would be. But the reason why I was a fan is because I saw how the players got into it. Like, I saw how, if you notice, a lot of the fights and the scuffles before Draymond did what Draymond did 2 days ago, a lot of that stuff occurred in playing games. Like, guys were getting at it, getting after it. I felt like the energy was there. The crowds were excited. So from that standpoint, I really liked it. I also felt like there were the Indiana Pacers. I mean, they put a lot of people on notice, you know what I mean, in those games, right? So, yeah, I was a fan of it. Now, as far as the Lakers talking about they want to raise a banner and all that other stuff, I'm like, I don't know about all that.
Yeah,
But
one step at a time, right?
Yeah, but I was a fan.
Yeah, like if I'm Kareem or Magic, I'm like, you're putting a banner up for that? Like, come on, man.
Nah.
Slow down a little bit here.
Yeah, if you're the Pacers, yeah, you put a banner up, but
man.
Keith, real quick, it's we spoke about Nick Nurse, and he's having a tremendous impact on his team. It seems like he really gets it, with this roster. How far can this team go, man? I know it's still relatively early in the season. We're not even at the All-Star break yet, or not even at the trade deadline. But how far do you think this team could potentially go as they're currently built? And what moves do you potentially see them making possibly at the trade deadline, if any at all?
You know what? How far can this team go? I mean, that's another great question because, you look at it. Are they the favorite? Like, are they favored over Milwaukee? Are they favored over Boston? No, they're not. So, like, right now, when you look at it, you're going to say to yourself, it could be another second round exit unless they throw everything together. But I still don't know if they can get out of the East, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, Milwaukee is a little tricky. Like, to me, like, I think they can be beat. That Boston Celtics team, they look like a team that's just waiting for the playoffs to me, right? And I feel like they're just a little bit too deep. If the Sixers do make a move, to me, I think they got to be 100% careful. It has to be someone like an Alex Caruso type, maybe an OG Obanobi. I always butcher the guy's name. I'm sorry, OG. But the thing is, the reason why I'm saying that is because right now, you asked me a question. You asked me if is Tyrese Maxey an all-star. A lot of these guys that are out there, the reason why they're going to get traded is because they're not having the type of season that Tyrese Maxey is having. But yet and still, you want to bring them in here, right? And I'm talking about the fans. And the thing is, like one guy, I'm talking about Zach LaVine, right? Great player, but I don't know if that would fit well with Maxey, Embiid, and LaVine. Now, if it was just LaVine and Embiid, maybe. But I feel like as long as Maxey continues to ascend, do you want to bring another ball dominant guy in here?
I mean, you said it. Less is more, right? You said it. Less could be more with this thing.
Less is more. And I really like Alex Caruso. But at the same time, we were talking about these guys. Now, again, the playoffs is a different animal. They only played 20-something games. But if you would tell me that Pat Bev was shooting the way he was from three, if you were telling me like Nico Batum, Robert Covington, all these guys, Marcus Morris, was providing the stuff that they provided. Like, my thing is, this is the best bench that the Sixers had in a long time.
Wow.
So honestly, think about it. Since the process, do you know of a better bench?
No.
I can't. I can't. As far as versatility, impact without scoring, combination of toughness, length. You're right. You may be onto something, Keith.
I mean, think about this, y'all. Think about this. They got Daniel House and PJ Tucker last summer because they wanted to get tougher. Daniel House is a part-time player now. Mm-hmm. Like, he plays when people are injured. You know what I'm saying? And like, he's a tough dude. He's a tough dude. That's how, like, this team, like, as the kids say, they got real ones. They got a bunch of real ones. So are you willing to get rid of these real ones for something that might not work? You know what I mean? Like, that's the key is, are you willing to do that for something that might not work?
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Keith, I know you got to run. We appreciate you hopping on, man. Always good catching up with you. Thank you for a couple minutes.
I appreciate you, Keith.
Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Keith Pompey. You can follow him again on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers, and of course, Inquirer.com. All right. Let's get a quick one in. Let's come back. Yeah, good. Always good catching up with Keith. Let's dive into the Sixers or the Seattle Seahawks here when we come back, Tone. And there's a lot to look at with them and what's going on with them and, where things stand with the Eagles in this game. So we got a lot to do between now and the end of the program. We'll have our NFL segment coming up after that. A lot of ground to cover. Let's talk about Pro Action Restoration. Yeah, as I mentioned, you see the background here. It's all cleared off. behind me because they're doing work around the house starting tomorrow, and I had to get everything out of there. I had a leak upstairs, it leaked into my basement, messed up my ceiling, messed up my bathroom down here, messed up the carpet, you name it. They got over here, they fixed it, and they're handling all the contract work all in one, one-stop shopping. They're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week to assist. They are licensed, bonded, and fully insured, serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. ProAction will work in conjunction with your insurance company. They are working in conjunction with mine. Again, it could be water, it could be fire, it could be smoke damage, mold remediation, whatever you need, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.